The communication center aboard the Council starship Unity buzzed with urgent signals. Admiral Vex stood before the main display, his blue skin darker than usual with worry. Reports flooded in from across the Outer Rim territories, each one more disturbing than the last. "Another pirate base destroyed, sir," reported Lieutenant Mora, her forearms working quickly across the control panels. "That makes 7 in the past month." Vex studied the tactical display showing red marks where criminal strongholds had once operated. The pattern made no sense. Someone or something was systematically destroying the most dangerous pirate fleets in the galaxy, but they left no trace of their identity. "Show me the latest footage," Vex commanded. The main screen flickered to life, displaying grainy security footage from a space station that had served as a base for the notorious Bloodclaw pirates. The timestamp showed the attack had happened just 2 days ago. In the recording, ships moved in perfect formation around the station. But there was only one attacking vessel. It darted between the defensive turrets like a dancer, firing precise shots that disabled rather than destroyed. Within minutes, the entire pirate fleet was floating helpless in space. "Enhance Sector 7, Vex ordered. The image zoomed in on the mysterious attacking ship. It looked strange, almost primitive compared to standard galactic vessels. Parts of it seemed to be welded together from different ships like someone had built it from scrap metal. Yet its movement was flawless, almost artistic in its deadly precision. "What kind of ship is that?" asked Captain Ross, Vex's second in command. "Unknown design," Mora replied, checking her databases. "The computer can't match it to any known species or technology." Vex frowned. In his 40 years of service to the Galactic Council, he had never seen anything like this. The ship's tactics were completely different from standard military doctrine. It fought like it was thinking 3 steps ahead of its enemies. "Sir, incoming priority message from Council headquarters," announced Communications Officer Dale. The face of Council President Lynn appeared on screen. Her ancient features showed deep concern. "Admiral Vex, you've seen the reports?" "Yes, Madam President. Someone is cleaning out the pirate nests in the Outer Rim. The criminal organizations are in panic. Some are fleeing to other galaxies. Others are banding together for protection. This mystery ship has single-handedly disrupted the entire criminal underground." Vex nodded. "Do we know who's responsible?" "That's what you're going to find out. Take your task force to the Meridian sector. Intelligence suggests the ship will strike there next." "Understood. What are our orders regarding contact?" President Lynn paused. "Observe first. If it's a new species, we follow standard first contact protocols. If it's some kind of weapon, we contain it. Either way, we need answers." The transmission ended. Vex turned to his crew. "Set course for the Meridian sector, maximum speed." 3 days later, the Council task force arrived at the edge of Meridian space. What they found there made Vex's blood run cold. The infamous Crimson Fleet, terror of a dozen star systems, was floating in pieces. Hundreds of pirate vessels drifted powerless through space. Some were completely destroyed, but most were simply disabled. Their crews apparently evacuated to emergency pods. "Scan for survivors," Vex ordered. "Reading multiple life pods, sir. Also detecting 1 active ship signature." On screen, the mysterious vessel appeared on their displays. Up close, it looked even more unusual. The ship was roughly the size of a Council destroyer, but its design was completely alien. Different sections seemed to come from various ship types, all welded together in a way that should have been impossible to fly. "It's moving toward us," reported Tactical Officer Ben. "Raise shields. Open a communication channel." The response came immediately. A voice spoke in basic galactic common, but the accent was strange. "Council ships, this is the vessel Reckoning. You are entering a cleanup zone. Please maintain distance while I finish processing the survivors." Vex and his officers exchanged glances. The voice was calm, professional, but there was something unsettling about it. It spoke like destroying an entire pirate fleet was routine work. "Unknown vessel, this is Admiral Vex of the Galactic Council. Identify yourself and your species." A pause. Then, "Name's Jake. As for species, I think you folks met some of my people about 30 years back." Didn't go too well if I remember. The story's right? The bridge fell silent. 30 years ago, the Council had made brief contact with a primitive species called humans from a small planet called Earth. The meeting had been short. The humans seemed too aggressive and unpredictable for standard diplomatic relations. The Council had marked their world as observe but do not contact and moved on. You're human? Vex asked, unable to hide his surprise. That's right. And before you ask, no, I'm not representing my government or anything official. This is personal business. Captain Ross stepped forward. Admiral, humans were classified as a pre-space civilization. How is one of them out here with technology like this? Jake's voice came through the speakers again. Look, Admiral, I can explain later if you want. Right now, I've got about 200 former slaves to evacuate from those pirate ships and another dozen worlds to check on. The Crimson Fleet liked to take hostages. On the tactical display, smaller ships were launching from the Reckoning, heading toward the disabled pirate vessels. Vex watched in amazement as they began efficiently collecting survivors and loading them onto what appeared to be converted cargo haulers. How long have you been operating out here? Vex asked. 6 months, give or take. Started after they hit my colony ship. The simple statement carried weight that made Vex uncomfortable. He pulled up his database on human settlements and found the entry he was looking for. 6 months ago, a human colony ship called New Hope had been attacked by pirates near the edge of Council space. All hands were reported lost. The New Hope, Vex said quietly. That's right. 3,000 people, including my wife and daughter. The Crimson Fleet sold some as slaves, spaced the rest. Jake's voice remained steady, but there was something cold beneath it. I've been tracking down everyone responsible ever since. Lieutenant Mora ran a quick scan of the debris field. Sir, these aren't random attacks. Every ship he's disabled was directly involved in the New Hope incident. He's been hunting them specifically. Vex studied the tactical display more carefully. The destroyed ships were arranged in a pattern that told a story. Jake hadn't just won a battle. He had executed a carefully planned campaign of revenge. Jake, how did you acquire your ship and weapons? Built most of it myself from salvage. Turns out pirates aren't very careful about securing their supply depots. I've been upgrading as I go. The implications hit Vex like a physical blow. This human had spent 6 months building a warship from scrap metal and using it to systematically destroy some of the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy. He had done it alone, with no backup, no support, no official authority. Admiral, Captain Ross whispered, if one human can do this, what could their entire species accomplish? Before Vex could answer, alarms began sounding across the bridge. Multiple ships incoming, reported Ben. It's a Council patrol squadron. On the display, 5 Council military vessels dropped out of hyperspace. Their weapons were already charging. This is Captain Stone of the patrol ship Guardian. We have reports of an unknown hostile vessel in this area. All ships prepare for inspection. Vex quickly opened a channel. Captain Stone, this is Admiral Vex. Stand down your weapons. We are conducting a diplomatic contact. Admiral, we weren't informed of your presence. What's the situation? Before Vex could respond, Jake's voice cut through the communications. Council ships, you need to move away from the debris field. Some of those pirate ships still have active weapon systems. Captain Stone's voice turned aggressive. Unknown vessel, you will surrender for inspection immediately. You are suspected of multiple acts of piracy and destruction of Council-protected shipping. Protected shipping? Jake's voice carried a note of dangerous amusement. Admiral, you might want to check your records on what the Crimson Fleet was doing in Council space. Vex quickly accessed the files. What he found made his stomach turn. The Crimson Fleet had been paying protection money to corrupt Council officials for years. On paper, they were listed as legitimate salvage operators. Captain Stone, Vex began, but it was too late. The patrol squadron had opened fire on the Reckoning. What happened next would be talked about in Council military academies for decades. Jake's ship moved like nothing Vex had ever seen. It twisted. Through the incoming fire, its mismatched hull somehow absorbing hits that should have crippled it. Return fire came in precise bursts that systematically disabled the patrol ships without destroying them. In less than 3 minutes, 5 Council military vessels were floating helpless. their crews unharmed, but their ships completely neutralized. Admiral, Vex. Jake's voice was calm again. You might want to collect your people before their life support runs out, and you should probably have a talk with whoever sent them out here without proper intelligence. The communication channel closed. On the display, the Reckoning was already moving away, its rescue ships returning with the last of the freed slaves. Vex stood in stunned silence, watching the human ship disappear into hyperspace. In one brief encounter, everything he thought he knew about galactic power had been turned upside down. Sir, Lieutenant Morris said quietly, what do we tell Council headquarters? Vex looked at the disabled patrol ships, then at the wreckage of the Crimson Fleet, then at the space where Jake's impossible ship had vanished. We tell them, he said slowly, that we need to completely reevaluate our assessment of the human species. And we tell them to do it quickly, before that man decides the Council itself needs to be held accountable for its failures. The bridge remained silent as rescue operations began. None of them could shake the feeling that they had just witnessed the beginning of something that would change the galaxy forever. In the distance, stars wheeled silently through space, indifferent to the fact that humanity had just announced itself to the universe in the most dramatic way possible. Admiral Vex stood in the Council chamber on the orbital station above Centauri Prime, facing a semicircle of alien officials who looked at him with barely concealed panic. The emergency session had been called within hours of his report about the human ship. You're telling us, said Counselor Mex, his tentacles writhing with agitation, that a single human destroyed the Crimson Fleet and disabled 5 of our military vessels. Disabled, not destroyed, Vex corrected. The human seems to have a policy of avoiding unnecessary casualties, even among pirates. President Lin leaned forward in her chair. Admiral, 30 years ago we classified humans as too primitive for standard diplomatic contact. How is this possible? Vex activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber. The image of Jake's ship, the Reckoning, appeared in 3 dimensions. This vessel appears to be constructed from salvaged parts of at least a dozen different ship types. Somehow the human has made them work together as a single, highly effective fighting unit. Impossible, snorted General Cax, the Council's military commander. Different species use completely different technologies. You can't just weld alien ship parts together and expect them to function. Yet this human has done exactly that, Vex replied. My engineering teams have analyzed the sensor data. The ship's power systems alone should have exploded the moment he tried to activate them. Instead, they're running at 97% efficiency. The chamber fell silent. Several counselors exchanged worried glances. What do we know about this Jake person? Asked Counselor Yell, her crystalline body flickering with nervous energy. Vex pulled up another display. Very little. He claims to be from the human colony ship New Hope, which was destroyed by pirates 6 months ago. According to our records, there were no survivors. Clearly our records were wrong, President Lin said dryly. What else? He's been systematically hunting down everyone responsible for the attack on his ship. Our intelligence suggests he's eliminated or captured approximately 200 known criminals across 8 star systems. General Cax scoffed. One being? Against organized pirate fleets, your intelligence must be flawed. Before Vex could respond, Lieutenant Mora burst into the chamber. Admiral, urgent news from the Outer Rim. The Black Star Syndicate has just issued a galaxy-wide warning about the human ship. She activated her portable display. A holographic message appeared, showing a scarred alien face that most of the Council recognized as crime boss Rix the Terrible. To all independent operators, Rix's recorded voice echoed through the chamber. Be warned, there is a human ship hunting in the outer systems. It appears without warning, strikes without mercy, and leaves no survivors among those who resist. We have lost contact with 7 major operations. The human calls himself Jake, and he pilots a ship called the Reckoning. All crews are advised to avoid engagement and retreat immediately if encountered. The recording ended. The Council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Fascinating, murmured Counselor Zal, the Council's chief scientist. The criminals are more afraid of this human than they are of our entire military. General Cax stood, abruptly. This is unacceptable. One primitive alien cannot be allowed to destabilize an entire sector. I request permission to dispatch a full battle group to capture or destroy this threat. General, President Lin said carefully, this human has already demonstrated he can disable our ships without destroying them. What makes you think a larger force would be more successful? Numbers, Madam President, and proper tactics. My patrol squadron was caught off guard. A prepared battle group would not make the same mistakes. Vex shook his head. General, I watched the engagement. The human wasn't lucky. He was tactically superior. His ship moved in ways that shouldn't be possible, and his weapon placement was perfect. He fought like he knew exactly what our ships would do before we did it. 3 days later, the Council Battle Group Hammer dropped out of hyperspace in the Kepler system, where intelligence suggested Jake's ship had been spotted. General Cax commanded the operation personally from the flagship Dominator. The system seemed empty at first. Long-range sensors detected only the usual debris from old mining operations and a few automated cargo haulers. Scan for unusual energy. Signatures. Cax ordered his tactical officer. Nothing, sir. If there's a ship here, it's running completely silent. Cax studied the display. He had brought 12 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers. More than enough firepower to deal with one converted pirate vessel. Sir, called out Communications Officer Tell, we're receiving a transmission on standard frequencies. Put it through. Jake's voice filled the bridge. Council ships, you're in the middle of a rescue operation. I've got about 50 former slaves down on the 3rd planet who need medical attention. You might want to keep your distance until I'm finished. Cax activated his own transmitter. This is General Cax of the Galactic Council Military Command. You will surrender immediately for inspection and questioning. A pause. Then Jake's voice sounding almost amused. General, you might want to check what happened to the last group that tried to inspect me. I am fully aware of Admiral Vex's encounter. Unlike him, I came prepared. Is that so? Tell me, General, what do you know about human military history? The question caught Cax off guard. What does that have to do with anything? Well, we've got this old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Thing is, I've been monitoring Council communications for the past few months. You want to know what I've learned? Cax felt a chill run down his spine. Enlighten me. Your government has been taking protection money from criminal organizations for decades. Pirates pay Council officials to look the other way. Slavers get safe passage through Council space. Even the attack on my colony ship was allowed to happen because someone in your government was getting paid. The bridge fell silent. Several officers looked uncomfortable. That's a serious accusation, Cax said slowly. It's also provable. I've got communication logs, financial records, shipping manifests, the works. Turns out pirates aren't very good at encrypting their data. On the tactical display, a new contact appeared. Jake's ship materialized as if it had simply turned off a cloaking device, though Council sensors detected no such technology. How did he do that? Whispered the tactical officer. The Reckoning hung in space about 1,000 kilometers away, its mismatched hull gleaming in the light of the system's star. Up close, it looked even more impossible than in the recordings. Sections of the ship seemed to belong to different eras of technology, yet they all worked together seamlessly. General, Jake's voice continued, I'm going to make this simple. You can either help me evacuate the survivors on that planet, or you can try to stop me. But if you choose option 2, you should know that I've already identified which of your ships has the best escape pods. Cax felt his anger rising. Are you threatening us? I'm being practical. See, the thing about humans is we're really good at learning from our mistakes. 6 months ago, I couldn't tell a plasma cannon from a coffee maker. Now I can build weapons that your engineers would call impossible. To prove his point, the Reckoning fired a single shot into empty space. The beam of energy twisted and curved through space like a living thing, before striking a piece of debris several thousand kilometers away. The debris simply vanished. Impossible, breathed the tactical officer. Energy weapons don't curve in space. General, Jake continued, I'm not your enemy. The real enemies are the ones who've been selling your people's safety to criminals, for profit. But if you insist on protecting them, then we're going to have a problem. Cax looked at his tactical display. 12 ships against 1. He had superior numbers, better technology, trained crews. But something about Jake's calm confidence made him hesitate. "Sir," whispered his second in command, "perhaps we should consider his offer of cooperation." "Never," Cax snarled. "All ships open fire." What followed became known in Council military circles as the Battle of Kepler. It lasted exactly 7 minutes and 12 seconds. Jake's ship moved through the attacking formations like water flowing around rocks. Every shot fired at the Reckoning seemed to miss by inches, while Jake's return fire was devastatingly accurate. One by one, Council ships found their weapons disabled, their engines shut down, their life support systems operating on backup power. The Reckoning danced between the larger vessels, its impossible weapons reaching out to cripple but not destroy. When it was over, 11 Council ships floated helpless in space, their crews unharmed but their pride thoroughly shattered. Only General Cax's flagship remained operational, and that was clearly by Jake's choice. "General," Jake's voice was still calm, "your people need help. I'm sending over repair coordinates for your ships. Also, there's a medical team standing by to assist with the survivors on the planet." "This is impossible," Cax said, staring at his tactical display. "How did you do this?" "Practice," Jake replied simply. "Lots and lots of practice. The pirates who killed my family gave me plenty of opportunities to learn." Over the next several hours, Cax watched in amazement as Jake coordinated the rescue operation with military precision. Shuttles from the Reckoning worked alongside Council medical ships to evacuate the survivors from the planet below. Jake's crew, which seemed to consist entirely of former slaves and refugees, worked efficiently, with Council personnel. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "the human is transmitting a data package." "What kind of data?" "Financial records, communication logs, shipping manifests. Everything he mentioned earlier." "Sir, if this information is accurate, it implicates dozens of high-ranking Council officials in criminal activities." Cax reviewed the files in growing horror. The scope of the corruption was staggering. Pirates had been paying Council officials for protection. Slave traders had safe passage agreements. Even the attack on Jake's colony ship had been allowed to proceed because someone in the government was receiving bribes. "General," Jake's voice interrupted his thoughts, "I'm uploading coordinates for 17 more locations where you'll find evidence of these criminal operations. You can either shut them down or I will." "And if we refuse?" "Then I guess you'll find out what humans are really capable of when we stop holding back." The transmission ended. On the display, the Reckoning was already moving away, its rescue operation complete. General Cax sat in his command chair, staring at the data files Jake had provided. For the first time in his military career, he was genuinely afraid. Not of the humans' weapons or his impossible ship, but of what he represented. Humanity had been dismissed as primitive and irrelevant. But Jake had proven that humans were anything but helpless. In 6 months, one man had built a warship from scrap metal and used it to systematically dismantle criminal organizations that had terrorized the galaxy for decades. If one human could do that, what could their entire species accomplish? As the Reckoning disappeared into hyperspace, Cax realized that first contact with humanity was happening all over again. And this time, the humans weren't the primitive species asking for help. They were the ones everyone else needed to worry about. The underground cantina on Nexus Station had never been so quiet. Pirates, smugglers, and criminals of every species sat hunched over their drinks, speaking in whispers. The usual boasting and loud arguments had been replaced by nervous glances and hushed conversations about the same topic that haunted every outlaw in the galaxy: the human ship. Crime boss Reich sat in his private booth, his massive frame filling the reinforced chair. His 6 arms drummed nervously on the table as he listened to reports from his lieutenants. Each report was worse than the last. "The Iron Fang gang is gone," reported his spy master Vale. "Found their base completely empty. No bodies, no wreckage, just empty ships floating in space." "What about their crew?" Reich asked. Prisoner transport logs show they were all delivered to council justice stations. Alive, but talking. The human doesn't kill unless he has to, but he makes sure everyone gets arrested. Reich's main lieutenant, a scarred alien named Bolt, leaned forward. Boss, we've lost contact with 12 operations in the past month. The human is moving faster, now. He's not just hunting the ones who hit his colony ship anymore. What do you mean? He's going after anyone connected to the slave trade. Anyone who deals in sentient beings. My sources say he's got a list of targets that includes half the major crime families in the sector. Reich stood and walked to the viewing port. Outside, Nexus Station buzzed with normal activity, but he knew that beneath the surface the criminal underworld was in chaos. Operations were shutting down. Criminals were fleeing to other galaxies. Some were even turning themselves in to council authorities rather than face the human. Tell me about his ship again, Reich said. Vale consulted his datapad. The Reckoning. Built from salvage parts, but somehow more advanced than anything we've seen. It appears and disappears without warning. No one has ever managed to track it successfully. And the human himself? Jake. No last name that we know of. Lost his family when pirates hit the colony ship New Hope. Been hunting ever since. The strange thing is he's not just some revenge-crazed survivor. He fights like a trained military commander. Bolt nodded. The tactical analysis from our surviving crews all say the same thing. He thinks several moves ahead. He knows what we're going to do before we do it. Reich turned back to his lieutenants. Then we change the game. Get me a meeting with the Keth mercenaries. If this human wants a fight, we'll give him one he can't win. 3 days later, Jake sat in the captain's chair of the Reckoning, studying the holographic display in front of him. His ship's computer had identified the next target, a slave processing facility hidden in an asteroid belt. According to his intelligence, over 1,000 sentient beings were being held there, waiting to be sold to the highest bidder. Jake called out his first officer, Lisa, a former slave he had rescued from a pirate vessel. We're getting multiple energy signatures near the target. Looks like they're expecting us. Jake studied the tactical display. 12 ships had positioned themselves around the asteroid facility. Their design was unfamiliar, but the energy readings suggested advanced military technology. Keth mercenaries, he said quietly. Someone's hired professional help. Lisa, who had once been a council military engineer before being captured by slavers, examined the sensor data. These aren't like the pirate ships we usually face. Keth, technology is designed specifically for ship-to-ship combat. Jake nodded. The Keth were known throughout the galaxy as the finest mercenary warriors money could buy. They had never been defeated in open combat, and their ships were armed with weapons that could punch through the heaviest armor. Sir, called out Tom, his communications officer, we're being hailed. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was mechanical, translated by a universal device. Human vessel, I am War Leader Thax of the Keth Sword Company. You will withdraw from this system immediately. Jake activated his own transmitter. War Leader, I'm here for the slaves in that facility. Once they're free, I'll leave. That is not acceptable. We have been contracted to stop you. Leave now or be destroyed. I've got a counteroffer, Jake replied. Check your contract. I'm betting it doesn't cover fighting someone who's already beaten council military forces. Our pause. Then Thax's voice returned, sounding less certain. Our contract is with Crime Lord Reich. We are honor-bound to fulfill it. Honor-bound to protect slavers? Another pause, longer this time. Jake used the silence to study the Keth formation. They had positioned their ships to create overlapping fields of fire, making it impossible for a conventional attack to succeed. But Jake had stopped using conventional tactics months ago. Human, Thax's voice returned. We have reviewed your combat records. You fight with skill, but the Keth have never been defeated. There's a first time for everything, Jake replied. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations. Jake didn't attack the Keth ships directly. Instead, he flew the Reckoning straight into the asteroid field, using the space rocks as cover and improvised weapons. The Keth followed, their superior ships easily matching his speed and maneuverability. But Jake wasn't trying to outrun them. He was leading them into a trap. As the Keth ships pursued him through the asteroid field, Jake used his ship's improvised tractor beams to grab chunks of space rock and hurl them at his pursuers. The asteroids weren't dangerous by themselves, but they forced the Keth to break formation. That's when Jake struck. The Reckoning spun around and fired a spread of missiles that weren't aimed at the Keth ships, but at the asteroids around them. The explosions created a cloud of debris that blinded the Keth sensors, allowing Jake to attack from unexpected angles. The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, 8 Keth ships were disabled, their crews alive but defeated. 3 others had retreated, and war leader Thax's flagship was damaged but still operational. Impossible, Thax's voice came through the communications. No one has ever defeated the Keth in open combat. I didn't defeat you in open combat, Jake replied. I changed the rules of the game. While the Keth ships limped away, Jake turned his attention to the slave facility. The asteroid had been hollowed out and converted into a massive prison complex. Using shaped charges, he blasted open the main airlocks and sent in his rescue teams. What they found inside made Jake's blood run cold. The facility wasn't just holding slaves for sale. It was a processing center where sentient beings were being modified, their memories erased, their personalities destroyed to make them more compliant. Jake, Lisa's voice was tight with anger. You need to see this. She led him through the facility to a control room filled with data terminals. The screens showed records of thousands of sentient beings who had been processed through the facility over the years. Many were children, taken from their families and sold to wealthy buyers across the galaxy. How many? Jake asked. Over 3,000 in the past year alone. And Jake, look at this. She pointed to a specific entry on the screen. Some of these people came from the New Hope, your colony ship. Jake stared at the records. Men, women, and children from his own community had been brought here, their minds wiped, their identities destroyed, people he had known, friends he had grown up with reduced to property. For the first time since beginning his hunt, Jake felt something more than cold anger. He felt rage. Sir? Tom's voice came through his communicator. We're getting reports from across the sector. Word about the battle is spreading. Some criminal organizations are surrendering to council authorities rather than face us. Jake looked at the facility around him, at the evidence of systematic cruelty and exploitation. His personal mission of revenge was growing into something larger. Other victims were joining his cause, volunteers who had suffered under the criminal organizations he was dismantling. Lisa, he said quietly, how many ships do we have now? 17, all crewed by people we've rescued. Former slaves, refugees, survivors of pirate attacks, they all want to help. Jake nodded. When he had started his hunt 6 months ago, he had been alone, driven by personal loss. Now he was leading a small fleet of people who had all suffered under the same criminal network. Tom, open a channel to all ships in our group. Channel open, sir. This is Jake. We've found evidence that the criminal organizations we're fighting are bigger than we thought. They're not just pirates and smugglers. They're part of a systematic network that profits from the suffering of innocent people. He paused, looking at the records of the thousands of lives destroyed in this one facility. Our mission is changing. We're not just hunting the people who destroyed the New Hope anymore. We're going after the entire network. Every slaver, every corrupt official, every criminal who profits from the pain of others. Lisa looked at him with concern. Jake, that's a much bigger fight than what we started with. I know, and anyone who wants to leave can go. No questions asked, no judgment. But I'm going to finish this. The responses came quickly. 17 ships, 17 crews of former victims, all volunteering to continue the fight. As the rescued prisoners were evacuated from the asteroid facility, Jake received a priority message from an unexpected source. Council Admiral Vex appeared on his communication screen. Jake, we need to talk. Admiral, I'm a little busy right now. I know. I've been monitoring your activities. The council is split on how to handle your operations. Some want to stop you. Others want to help you. Jake raised an eyebrow. Help me? The evidence you provided about corruption in our government has caused a political earthquake. Half the council is under investigation. We need to coordinate our efforts. What are you proposing? A meeting. Neutral ground. There's something happening that's bigger than both our operations. The criminal organizations are uniting under a single leader. If we don't work together, they might actually win. Jake looked at the data streams showing criminal network communications. The Admiral was right. The fragmented gangs and pirates were organizing into something more dangerous. Where and when? Jake asked. The Kepler system in 3 days. And Jake, you should know that not everyone on the council agrees with this approach. Some are calling you a terrorist? And what do you call me? Admiral Vex smiled grimly. The best thing that's happened to galactic law enforcement in 50 years. As the Reckoning and its growing fleet prepared to leave the asteroid field, Jake realized that his personal mission of revenge had evolved into something much larger. He was no longer just hunting the criminals who had destroyed his family. He was leading a revolution. The space around the Kepler system had never seen so many ships gathered in one place. Admiral Vex watched from the bridge of his flagship as Jake's small fleet arrived at the designated coordinates. 17 ships of various sizes, all bearing the scars of battle, all crewed by people who had every reason to hate the established order. Admiral, reported his tactical officer, the human fleet is maintaining position at the agreed distance. Vex nodded. The meeting location had been carefully chosen, far enough from inhabited systems to avoid civilian casualties if things went wrong, but close enough to major trade routes to ensure quick reinforcement if needed. Open a channel to Jake's ship. Jake's face appeared on the main screen. He looked older than Vex remembered from their first encounter, weathered by months of constant warfare, but his eyes still held that same calm determination that had made him so dangerous. Admiral, Jake said, simply. Jake, thank you for coming. I know this wasn't an easy decision. Let's just say I'm interested in what you have to propose, but first, I want to show you something. The display changed to show intelligence data that made Vex's blood run cold. Star charts, communication intercepts, and financial records painted a picture of criminal organization on a scale he had never imagined. This is what we've discovered in the past month, Jake continued. The criminal networks aren't separate organizations anymore. They're all reporting to one person. Crime Lord Reich has united them into something called the Shadow Alliance. Vex studied the data. How many ships are we talking about? Conservative estimate, 300 combat vessels plus support ships. They've been building this alliance while we've been chasing individual gangs. Where are they based? Jake's expression darkened. That's the problem. They're not based anywhere. They're mobile, moving through a region of space called the Elbow. The bridge fell silent. Every council officer knew about the Elbow, a dangerous region where 3 star systems came close together, creating gravitational anomalies that made normal space travel nearly impossible. It was the perfect hiding place for anyone who wanted to avoid detection. The Elbow is a death trap, Vex said. The gravitational distortions tear ships apart. Not if you know the safe routes. And apparently Reich does. He's been using it as his base of operations for years. Captain Ross, Vex's second-in-command, leaned forward. Admiral, if the criminals are gathering there in force, we need to act quickly. But the Elbow's gravitational fields make conventional fleet tactics impossible. Jake nodded. That's why Reich chose it. He thinks the environment will neutralize any tactical advantage we might have. He might be right, Vex admitted. Council ships aren't designed to operate in those conditions. Mine is, Jake said quietly. The Reckoning was built from salvaged parts. It's designed to adapt to unusual conditions. I can navigate the Elbow. You're talking about taking on 300 ships with 17. I'm talking about using the environment against them, the same way they're trying to use it against us. Before Vex could respond, alarm klaxons began sounding throughout his ship. Admiral, called his communications officer. Priority alert from Council headquarters. We're receiving reports of simultaneous attacks on civilian targets across 7 star systems. The main display showed news feeds from across the galaxy. Space stations burning, cargo convoys destroyed, civilian ships adrift in space. The attacks were clearly coordinated, designed to cause maximum terror and confusion. "It's starting," Jake said grimly. "Reich isn't waiting for us to come to him. He's bringing the war to civilian populations." A new voice cut through the communication channels. Crime Lord Reich's scarred face appeared on every screen, broadcasting on all frequencies. "People of the galaxy," Reich's voice boomed, "for too long, you have lived under the protection of corrupt governments that care nothing for your safety. The Galactic Council takes your money and taxes but cannot protect you from a single human in a salvaged ship." Vex clenched his fists as the criminal continued his speech. "I offer you true protection. Join the Shadow Alliance. Pay our reasonable fees and you will never again suffer from the chaos that one rogue human has brought to your lives. Refuse and suffer the consequences." The transmission ended. Vex looked at Jake, whose expression had turned deadly cold. "He's using my actions as justification for a protection racket," Jake said. "Every attack I made on criminals, he's spinning. It is proof that the Council can't maintain order." "It's brilliant," Captain Ross admitted reluctantly. "He's turned you from a hero into his best recruiting tool." Vex made a decision that would change galactic history. "Jake, I'm giving you temporary authorization to act as a Council agent. My fleet will support your operations." "Admiral," protested his tactical officer, "Headquarters hasn't approved any joint operations with the human." "Then we'll ask for forgiveness later," Vex replied. "Right now, civilian lives are at stake." Jake studied the star charts of the Elbow region. "If we're going to do this, we need to move fast. Every hour we wait, Reich gets stronger. What's your plan?" "We use the Elbow against him. The gravitational anomalies that make it dangerous also make it unpredictable. If we can get his fleet to chase us into the worst part of the distortion field, we might be able to even the odds." Over the next 12 hours, Jake and Admiral Vex worked together to plan an operation that violated every rule of conventional space warfare. Council ships would provide long-range support, while Jake's smaller, more adaptable fleet would penetrate deep into the Elbow to draw out Reich's forces. "Remember," Jake briefed his captains, "we're not trying to win a straight fight. We're trying to use the environment to break up their formations and take them on in smaller groups." Lisa, now commanding one of the rescued ships, raised a concern. "Jake, what if the gravitational fields affect our ships too?" "They will. The difference is, our ships are already adapted to unusual conditions. Council ships are built for normal space. Reich's ships are designed for standard pirate operations. We're the only ones who've been operating in impossible situations from the beginning." The combined fleet approached the Elbow 3 days later. The region looked peaceful from a distance, but long-range sensors detected the massive gravitational distortions that made it so dangerous. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported the tactical officer aboard Vex's flagship. Multiple ships emerging from the anomaly field. The display showed Reich's fleet streaming out of the Elbow like angry insects from a disturbed nest. Hundreds of ships of every size and configuration, all bearing the mark of the Shadow Alliance. "Jake," Vex's voice came through the communications, "they outnumber us 10-1. I know, that's why we're not fighting them here." Jake's ship, the Reckoning, suddenly accelerated toward the Elbow at maximum speed. His fleet followed, diving into the gravitational chaos with reckless abandon. "He's insane," muttered one of Vex's officers. "No," Vex said, watching the tactical display. "He's brilliant." Reich's fleet followed Jake into the Elbow, confident in their superior numbers. But as they entered the region of gravitational anomalies, their formations began to break apart. Ships found themselves pulled off course by invisible forces, their navigation systems confused by the constantly shifting gravitational fields. Jake's ships, by contrast, moved through the chaos like they belonged there. The Reckoning led them along routes that seemed suicidal but somehow worked, using the gravitational distortions as weapons against their pursuers. "How is he doing that?" Reich demanded from his command ship, watching as his carefully organized fleet scattered through the anomaly field. "Unknown, sir," his tactical officer replied. "Our ships are experiencing severe navigation problems. The gravitational fields are much stronger than predicted. Then adapt. We have superior numbers, but numbers meant nothing in the elbow. Ships that tried to maintain formation found themselves torn apart by conflicting gravitational forces. Vessels that became separated from the main fleet discovered they couldn't find their way back through the maze of distortions. Jake used every trick he had learned in months of impossible battles. His ships would appear from behind gravitational shadows, strike at isolated enemy vessels, then disappear back into the chaos before reinforcements could arrive. "Admiral," Jake's voice reached Vex through the long-range communications. "Now would be a good time for that support fire." Vex's fleet, positioned at the edge of the elbow, began targeting the Shadow Alliance ships that had been driven out of the anomaly field. The combination of Jake's hit-and-run tactics inside the elbow and Vex's conventional firepower outside created a devastating pincer movement. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the Shadow Alliance had lost more than half its ships. Reich's command vessel was damaged and retreating. Its escort vessels scattered across 3 star systems. "This isn't over, human," Reich's voice came through the communications one last time. "I'll hunt you to the ends of the galaxy." "You're welcome to try," Jake replied. "But next time, maybe don't pick a fight in my neighborhood." As the surviving Shadow Alliance ships fled, Jake and Vex met aboard the Admiral's flagship to assess the damage. Both fleets had taken casualties, but the criminal organization had been broken as an effective fighting force. "The elbow," Vex said, studying the star charts. "That's what this was all about, wasn't it? Not just the battle, but your entire campaign. You've been driving them toward this confrontation from the beginning." Jake nodded. "The moment I learned about Reich's alliance, I knew we'd have to face them eventually. The elbow was the only place where we could win against superior numbers. How did you know it would work?" Jake looked out at the chaotic gravitational fields that had just decided the fate of the galaxy. "Because humans have a saying. When you can't change the rules, change the game. The elbow didn't just level the playing field, it made the field itself our ally." Admiral Vex realized he was looking at something unprecedented in galactic history. One human, with determination and tactical genius, had not only survived impossible odds, but had used them to reshape the balance of power across multiple star systems. "What happens now?" Vex asked. Jake was quiet for a moment, watching the stars wheel through space beyond the gravitational chaos of the elbow. "Now we finish what we started. Reich is still out there, and there are still people who need help. The Council will support you. Some of them will. Others will see me as a threat to the established order." Jake turned to face Vex. "But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today, we won." As both fleets began the long journey back to civilized space, neither Jake nor Admiral Vex realized that their victory at the elbow of fate would be remembered as the moment when humanity announced itself as a galactic power. The age of human influence in the galaxy had begun. 6 months after the Battle of the Elbow, the galaxy looked very different. Admiral Vex stood on the observation deck of Council headquarters, watching human ships dock at what had once been an exclusively alien spaceport. The sight still amazed him, even after all this time. "Admiral," his aide Lieutenant Mora approached with a data pad, "the latest reports from the outer rim sectors." Vex took the pad and reviewed the statistics. Crime rates down 60%. Pirate attacks at their lowest level in 50 years. Slave trading operations dismantled faster than new ones could be established. All thanks to the actions of one human and the movement he had started. "Any word from Jake?" Vex asked. "His fleet is currently in the Proxima sector, investigating reports of a new criminal organization, trying to fill the void left by the Shadow Alliance." Vex nodded. In the months since the elbow, Jake had become something between a law enforcement officer and a legend. His growing fleet of rescued victims and volunteers now numbered over 100 ships, all working to maintain the peace he had fought so hard to establish. The door chimed, and President Lin entered the observation deck. She looked tired, older than her years. The political upheaval following the corruption revelations had taken its toll on the entire council government. "Admiral, we need to discuss the human situation." "What about it?" President Lin gestured toward the docking bays below. where human ships worked alongside council vessels. In 1 year, humans have gone from an unknown species to one of the most influential forces in galactic politics. Some council members are getting nervous. They should be grateful. Jake's operations have made space safer for everyone. I agree. But not everyone sees it that way. Councillor Dex is proposing restrictions on human activities. He claims they're becoming too powerful too quickly. Vex turned to face the president. And what do you think? I think we're witnessing the emergence of a new galactic power, and we need to decide whether they'll be our allies or our rivals. Before Vex could respond, his communicator activated. Jake's face appeared on the small screen, looking as calm as ever despite being thousands of light years away. Admiral, sorry to interrupt, but we've got a situation out here that requires council attention. What kind of situation? We've found Reich. The conference room at council headquarters filled quickly. President Lin, Admiral Vex, General Cax, and several other high-ranking officials gathered around the holographic display as Jake transmitted his report from the Proxima sector. We tracked Reich to a hidden base in the asteroid belt around Proxima 7, Jake explained. But when we got there, we found something unexpected. The display showed images of a massive space station built into a hollowed-out asteroid. But instead of weapon emplacements and defensive shields, the station was surrounded by medical ships and refugee transports. Medical ships? General Cax asked. Reich's been running a relief operation for war refugees from the outer systems. Apparently, after we destroyed his criminal empire, he decided to try a different approach to staying alive. President Lin leaned forward. You're saying the galaxy's most wanted crime lord has become a humanitarian? More or less. He's been using his remaining resources to help people displaced by the chaos that followed the Shadow Alliance's collapse. Not exactly what I expected to find. Admiral Vex studied the images. What's your assessment, Jake? Complicated. On one hand, he's still responsible for thousands of deaths and the destruction of my colony ship. On the other hand, he's currently saving lives and providing aid to people who desperately need it. The room fell silent. The situation was unprecedented in galactic law enforcement. How do you arrest someone who's actively engaged in humanitarian work, even if they're guilty of past crimes? What are you requesting, Jake? President Lin asked. Permission to offer Reich a deal. Full cooperation with war crimes investigations in exchange for amnesty for his current operations and the people working with him. General Cax objected immediately. Absolutely not. You can't negotiate with criminals. General, Jake's voice remained calm. I've learned something important over the past year. Sometimes the best way to stop being enemies is to start working toward the same goals. President Lin considered the proposal. What would this cooperation look like? Reich knows the locations of dozens of hidden criminal bases, the identities of corrupt officials we haven't caught yet, and the financial networks that funded the slave trade. He also has organizational skills that could be useful for legitimate relief operations. And you trust him? Jake was quiet for a moment. I trust that he wants to survive, and he's smart enough to know that helping people is his best chance of staying alive, and maybe earning some redemption. 3 days later, Jake's ship, the Reckoning, docked with Reich's asteroid station. The meeting between the human who had destroyed his criminal empire and the crime lord who had ordered the death of his family was watched by observers throughout the galaxy. Jake walked through the station's corridors, accompanied by Lisa and a small security detail. The station was bustling with activity as medical teams treated refugees and engineers worked to expand living facilities. Impressive operation, Lisa observed. He always was good at organization, Jake replied. It's just strange seeing him use it for something positive. They found Reich in the station's command center, coordinating supply shipments to a disaster. Zone 3 systems away. The massive crime lord looked older, his scarred face showing signs of stress and fatigue. Jake, Reich said without turning around. I wondered when you'd finally track me down. Reich. The crime lord finished his current task and turned to face his former enemy. I suppose you're here to arrest me. That depends on you. Reich gestured around the command center where screens showed ongoing relief operations across multiple star systems. As you can see, I found a new line of work. Why? The question seemed to catch Reich off guard. Why what? Why change? You could have rebuilt your criminal empire, found new allies, continued the cycle of violence. Why this? Reich was quiet for a long moment. Because you taught me something at the elbow. You showed me that the old ways don't work anymore. The galaxy is changing, and those who don't change with it get left behind. Jake studied the alien crime lord. The council is willing to discuss terms. Full cooperation with ongoing investigations, complete transparency in your operations, and community service working on legitimate relief efforts. And in exchange, you get to keep helping people instead of rotting in a council prison cell. Reich laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the command center. You know, when I first heard about the human who was hunting my people, I thought you were just another revenge-obsessed victim. I never imagined you'd offer me redemption. Everyone deserves a second chance, even you. The agreement between Jake and Reich became known as the Proxima Accords, establishing a precedent for dealing with reformed criminals throughout the galaxy. Reich's organization was restructured as a legitimate relief agency, operating under council oversight but maintaining its independence. The arrangement proved successful beyond anyone's expectations. Reich's knowledge of criminal networks led to the arrest of dozens of corrupt officials and the dismantling of several major criminal organizations. His organizational skills proved invaluable in coordinating relief efforts for refugee populations across the Outer Rim. But the most significant change came from an unexpected source. Other human ships began appearing in civilized space following the routes Jake had established. Earth, once dismissed as irrelevant, found itself at the center of galactic attention. Admiral, Lieutenant Mora reported during a routine briefing, "We're receiving formal diplomatic communications from the human government on Earth." Vex looked up from his reports. "What kind of communications?" "They're requesting formal diplomatic relations with the Galactic Council. It seems Jake's activities have convinced them that humanity belongs on the galactic stage." Vex smiled. "Schedule a formal first contact ceremony. This time, let's do it right." The ceremony took place 3 months later in the council chambers. Earth's ambassador, a woman named Ambassador Chen, stood before the assembled representatives of dozens of alien species. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," she began. "1 year ago, one of our people set out to seek justice for a terrible crime. In doing so, he demonstrated that humanity has something valuable to contribute to galactic civilization." She gestured to where Jake sat in the gallery, still wearing the simple uniform he had adopted during his campaign against the criminals. "Jake Taylor showed us that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from superior technology or overwhelming force, but from the determination to do what's right, regardless of the odds." The council voted unanimously to accept Earth as a full member of galactic civilization. Later that evening, Jake stood once again on the observation deck where his journey had begun, watching ships from dozens of worlds work together in the space around council headquarters. Admiral Vex joined him, carrying 2 glasses of what Jake had learned was excellent Centaurian wine. "Any regrets?" Vex asked, offering Jake a glass. Jake considered the question. "About the people I lost? Always. About the path that brought me here? No. What's next for you?" "There's still work to do. The galaxy's a big place, and there are still people who need help. The Council has officially offered you a position as Special Enforcement Coordinator. Your own command, official authority, unlimited resources." Jake took a sip of the wine. "That's generous, but I think I'll stick with what I've been doing. Official authority has a way of complicating things." Vex chuckled. "I had a feeling you'd say that." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the dance of ships against the stars. Jake's impossible journey from lone survivor to galactic legend had changed everything, not just for himself, but for his entire species. "Admiral," Jake said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. That first day when you found me at the Crimson Fleet wreckage, did you ever imagine it would lead to this?" Vex looked out at the human ships working alongside council vessels, at the refugees being processed through Jake's humanitarian network, at the peace that had settled over sectors that had known only violence for decades. Honestly? No, I thought. I was dealing with one angry human in a salvaged ship. I never imagined I was witnessing the beginning of a new age. Jake raised his glass. To new beginnings. To the future, Vex replied. As they toasted, neither man noticed the small communication device on Jake's belt quietly receiving a priority message. Somewhere in the outer darkness, another group of victims was calling for help. Another injustice was waiting to be corrected. Jake's work was far from over. But now, for the first time since losing his family, he wasn't facing the darkness alone. Humanity had found its place among the stars, and the galaxy would never be the same. The legend of the human ship reckoning would be told for generations, inspiring others to stand up against impossible odds. But the man himself remained what he had always been, someone who refused to accept that evil could triumph simply because it was stronger. In the end, that had made all the difference.